Because LEGO releases so many new Star Wars sets in minifigures each year, over time there have been quite a couple of pretty weird and goofy looking ones. In today's video I'm gonna show you 10 minifigs that I think qualify to be labeled exactly that. This time I didn't put them in any particular order, but I'm pretty sure that these are some of the weirdest ones out there. I guess there are still many more of them out there, so if you know any additional weird looking LEGO Star Wars figures, feel free to tell me in the comments down below and I may be able to do a part 2 of this. If you enjoyed this type of content, go hit that subscribe button, and now let's start with the video. The first minifigure that came to my mind when I thought of weird LEGO Star Wars minifigures was SW006 Aldabedo from set number 7159 Star Wars Pod Racing Bucket. To be fair, the first version of Aldabedo released in a pretty interesting set as well, since the parts literally came in a bucket instead of a typical LEGO box, but the minifig itself is nightmare fuel. Aldabedo is a pretty lengthy and slim looking character in the Phantom Menace, and considering that the set came out in 2000, LEGO was a little too confident in their ability to recreate his look in minifigure form. They used a bent over B1 battle droid to which they attached 3 arms instead of a head, and to finish this atrocity you have to attach a slope with a masked head and helmet on top of the back piece, which looks pretty weird. I don't think that this guy was fun to play with, and he also looks insanely bad to display as he doesn't resemble the character at all. I'm not sure what LEGO thought they were cooking here, but this thing is... I don't even know how to describe it. But LEGO didn't stop there, they massacred Aldabedo twice. Just 1 year later they released SW0979 Aldabedo, but this time he was made out of 1 piece instead of 9. He was released in set number 7186 Water's Junkyard, and credit where credit's due, the minifig looks way more like the in-universe character and actually resembles most of how he looks. However, this quote-unquote minifig has no printing at all, and since it is only 1 mold, you literally can't do anything with him besides attaching him onto some studs. I don't think that any kid really had fun playing with this thing, and while it looks better than the previous version, LEGO just had to accept that it was way too early for them to replicate such a complicated character in minifig form. Staying with the pod racers for a moment, the next figure on this list is SW0043 Gasgano from set number 7171 Mos Espa Pod Race. The next pod racer and the next hilarious try from LEGO to replicate him as a minifigure. In the movie, Gasgano has 4 arms and 2 legs, whereas this version only has 2 arms, or 4 arms and no legs, or 4 legs and no arms. He literally looks like an alien dog and not like the character that we see in the movie, and the only thing that remotely reminds me of Gasgano is the head, the helmet with the goggles, and maybe the long neck. Once again, the time was way too early for LEGO to even try recreating Gasgano as a minifig, and it really shows in the terrible result. I get that they wanted to release a bunch of Phantom Menace based sets when starting the Star Wars license, but these minifigures are just not it. Looking at the version that we got in the Skywalker saga, we can see what a modern version would look like, and it is miles better. But let's move away from the pod racers for a minute and take a look into Jabba's palace. SW0412 Boma Monk from set number 9416 Jabba's palace is a pretty weird character in itself, and LEGO even made him twice. If you didn't know what a Boma Monk is, from what I remember these guys are super religious and got rid of their body because they believe it limits them in some form. In universe they look like huge robotical spiders with a small tank where their brain is located, and they used to live in Jabba's palace before and even after he took over. After my pretty long explanation that I could be wrong with, I still don't get one thing. Why even make that guy? There are so many weird and cool aliens in Jabba's palace, and I'm sure that pretty much anyone would have been way cooler than this partially accurate monk that you can't really do much with. Even another Gamorrean guard would have been cooler, so I don't know why LEGO chose to include him. The 5th candidate on this list is the first real human on here, and it's SW0127 Clone Jet Trooper from set number 7261 Clone Turbo Tank. Before I researched the design that this minifigure is based on, I always thought that LEGO just tried to resemble a jetpack and accidentally made him look like a flying ant, but no, the jetpack is actually pretty accurate to a very specific design. I'm not entirely sure in which source material these jetpacks were used, I guess in some early concepts for Revenge of the Sith, hence why I couldn't find any actual images of these troopers from the movie, but to be fair, the LEGO design is pretty decent. I'm obviously way happier with the modern jet troopers and the jetpacks, but overall this minifigure is not as bad as I thought. It still looks weird, hence why I've put it on this list, but it's more accurate than I would have expected. Next up we have a promotional item, and it's SW0984 Black VIP from the Black Card Display Stand GWP. This minifigure was part of a LEGO VIP promo before they rebranded it to Insiders, and VIPs could get it if they bought the USS Millennium Falcon at the release, and it was a limited amount of I believe 20,000 cards that promised some special rewards for a year, which ended up to be pretty disappointing. It is remembered as one of the most disappointing LEGO Star Wars promos ever, but I don't want to go too much into detail here as this is a topic for another video. Coming back to the figure, you get a mostly black minifig with yellow hands, no print on the legs, no print on the head, and a small print of a Millennium Falcon on the torso. This is not only a pretty expensive and mediocre minifigure, but also a very unnecessary one. I mean, it was released in a pretty forgettable promo and didn't really hurt anyone, but who asked for this? But now continuing with this list, besides some older figures from the early 2000s and one of the weirdest promos, I also wanted to include some more modern releases. Because of that, the 7th figure on this list is SW1357 Darth Jar Jar from set number 75389, the Dark Falcon. You could include most of the minifigures from Rebuild the Galaxy on this list, but I thought that especially Darth Jar Jar is pretty fitting. While he does appear in the show, hence why he got a minifig, it is still pretty crazy that this fan favorite quote-unquote conspiracy theory character got an actual LEGO minifigure in an official set. Besides that, Darth Jar Jar is a pretty boring looking minifig since he doesn't come with a cape, black printing or a hood, which I would have loved to see, but it is still a pretty funny release and I'm very happy that the writers decided to make him part of their show. I usually really like the Treadwell droids at LEGO releases, but this one is a little interesting. But little describes it pretty well, because SW0587 Mini Treadwell droid from set number 75059 Sandcrawler is a tiny minifigure. When I first saw this guy, I thought that he had to be part of an advent calendar, but no, he was part of the Goofiest Sandcrawler, which is really interesting. I don't have the slightest clue what LEGO based this droid on, cause it doesn't look like any Treadwell droids that I have seen before, and I have no idea why this guy was part of the Goofiest Sandcrawler. This very small version does not fit any of the known models that I found on Wikipedia, and he is in general way too small compared to the in-universe design, so why did LEGO include him? The second and last clone trooper on this list is SW0605, Clone Airborne Trooper from set number 75089, Geonosis Troopers Battle Pack. I could have easily included both of the Geonosis clones in this video, but I chose to just include one to not make this list too boring. Now on first glance these troopers do look really good with their camouflage look and their pretty accurate molds, but when you think about some actual Geonosis clones, you do realize that the LEGO variants aren't actually canon. We see two versions in the Clone Wars TV show, one of which is a Special Ops Clone Trooper, you might be more familiar with Clone Commander Jet, and the Clone Flame Troopers from the Flame Trooper Corps. Both of these troopers didn't and still don't have a LEGO minifigure version, so why did LEGO decide to make some clones that don't actually exist? Yeah, these troopers would have needed some new molds, especially for their helmets, but there would have been some fire minifigures and actually exist in the Star Wars universe. I know the actions of the Flame Troopers are maybe a little bit brutal for a LEGO set, but to be fair, some other Flame Troopers do actually exist, so I don't really see a problem here. But now the last guy on this list is SW0038, Watto from set number 7186, Watto's Junkyard. This time LEGO luckily made an actual minifig and just made a custom mold on top of a blue normal LEGO minifigure, but because they didn't print any details on these unique molds in the early days, he looks like a production error rather than an actual release. Watto heavily reminds me of the monochrome minifigures that some people collect, and looking at the modern version, I heavily prefer the newer release that LEGO gave us. It is pretty insane that this guy is one of the most expensive LEGO Star Wars minifigs out there, but I do have to admit that he has a special place in my heart in some way or form. Is he weird and deserves to be on this list? Absolutely yes. Do I still kind of like him because of nostalgia? Also yes. But now these were 10 of the weirdest and goofiest Star Wars minifigs that I could find. If you can still think of any additional ones, please let me know down in the comments below, as well as what you think about my selection. Now I really hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, I would highly appreciate a like to support the channel. If you're new, go hit the subscribe button, and if you want to check out some of my other videos, they will appear on the end screen right now.